Hi faculty. In this short video I'm going to explain the reasons for using multi-criteria decision-making analysis in my department head appraisal of your performance. As you will notice on my guidelines for completing the annual performance report, that I will be using a different structure for evaluating your performance. So if you scroll down on this document and go to this page where it talks about the department head criteria for faculty appraisals, you will notice this first sentence: for fall 2015, I will use the following 3 rubrics to evaluate performance. The logic or structure of the rubrics is based on multiple criteria decision analysis, a fully developed method that is widely used in making complex evaluations using qualitative and quantitative data and explicit criteria. And I specifically draw on work of faculty in Portugal that have used multi-criteria decision analysis for faculty evaluation. You will see on this guideline that I'm using the multi-criteria decision analysis model for teaching, and I have the rubric right here. This is a screenshot. For scholarship, and here's a rubric, and for service, and here's a rubric. Since this is somewhat new, I want to explain this approach a little more carefully, and this is not a change in what I am doing or the department is doing. I think it's a clear development and extension of what I've been trying to do all along, and that is to make the department head appraisals clearer, more transparent, and actually more accurate in trying to capture the complexity and the multiple factors of what we all do. Now, if I can go to a simple Wikipedia page, forgive the Wikipedia, but in this case it's useful, that describes a multiple criteria decision analysis. This is a subdiscipline of operations research, which simply means when institutions have to make complex decisions with multiple criteria and often contradictory criteria that you need to weigh carefully, that also involve qualitative and quantitative data, and all of this data and criteria have values to them. And it says, in our daily lives, we usually weigh multiple criteria implicitly, and we may be comfortable with the consequences of such decisions that are only based on intuition. On the other hand, when stakes are high, it is important to properly structure the problem and explicitly evaluate multiple criteria. This is exactly where I think we have been in our appraisals, where the criteria have been there, but the process has been so implicit, and the weighting and value of the criteria has been implicit. So my goal is to use this model to make our process better. Here's a simple model done by my alma mater, North Carolina State. They use multiple criteria decision analysis to evaluate where to put a city aquatics facility. Now, the multi-criteria decision analysis has also, as I mentioned, been taken to faculty evaluations, and these are the faculty members, especially Bani Costa from Portugal, who have done a whole bunch of work, including a number of books and other things that talk about how to make faculty evaluations using this model much better in many ways. So this is an article that I have also shared with you, and I'm going to talk about a few parts of this article, and then I'm going to make a video for all 3 of the other well, I'm going to make a video for teaching and for research and for service after this video. The abstract is actually pretty good here. The first part talks about how universities are being pressured to improve their evaluation systems to make them more responsive. But the actual methods for doing that have been seriously lacking and are lagging far behind. And what they do right here is based on concepts and methods of multiple criteria value measurement. This article and what I want to do proposes a faculty evaluation model that addresses a whole range of activities and can be applied with our own distinct scientific area, our own areas. And this model has various levels of value. It uses weights, and it uses criterias, and it uses what I would call optimization. Perhaps some of us will wonder why I'm going to this route, and I think it's important. I think we will agree on a couple of things, and this is what these authors point out. It is hard to measure individual faculty members' contribution, and it's hard to balance research, teaching, and service. And as they have argued, and I agree, that faculty evaluation models usually are objective or subjective. But the problem with objective is the quantitative data and the counts and the criteria cannot understand some of the complexities and differences across our disciplines. So that makes it makes it very difficult for really objective approaches to work. On the other hand, subjective approaches are so full of biases and so lacking in sufficient information to actually make the appraisals work. So this system actually tries to combine objective and subjective, but it's a really guided process. Okay, here's the approach. This approach is grounded in strong theoretical foundations. There's journals and books on this whole area across a multitude of areas. And this is not only business. In fact, this has come out of nonprofits. It's come out of municipal and governmental. It's coming out of developmental research on how you actually make decisions in very complex situations. The thing I like the best is this respects a multiple criteria nature of faculty evaluation, given that there might be multiple and conflicting objectives to be considered in evaluations and different viewpoints. And it has a way of pulling those together that makes sense. Allows for building comprehensive and transparent models. So we have the same rules applied, but we also have the flexibility and capacity to make sure that those objectives and those rules are applied fairly. Here's the model they propose, and I don't really like this graphic, but what it really starts with, it calls area of concern and criteria. This is where we have the criteria. And then we have quantitative descriptors or quantitative data, qualitative descriptors, and targets and ceilings. And this is what's called in the structuring phase when you're adding all of this information together. The next phase are what are called the value functions. And this is where you try to convert the actual data into meets expectations, exceeds expectations, or fails to meet expectations. And these values have weights, and the weights are really important. And then finally we have what's called an optimization model, which means once we finish, for example, once we finish evaluating or looking at all the data using the weights of a course, the course evaluation is the actual performance in a course, we also like to optimize and to make sure that we can get the best performance as well as the most accurate picture of a course. And one of the examples that you will see is teaching a 200 level survey course in literature or a gen ed writing course. It has different challenges and different struggles for a variety of reasons as compared to teaching a PhD course, 600 level course in rhetoric. And so we try to optimize or add value based on the strengths and weaknesses of the context, the student population, and a whole bunch of other things that actually you'll see how powerful that becomes. Now, I'm not going to bore you in going into these authors' discussions and descriptions of these areas. You'll see that they follow here. I'm going to take you to the models that I have laid out and generally explain how they work. And that will be the end of this video. And then you can go, if you prefer, to the 3 videos on teaching, research, and service. Okay, this is one of the 3. This is the rubric for teaching evaluation. So I'm just going to highlight really quickly the structure of it. Here on this left column, I have pulled the criterion from the course evaluations. And so we have organization, content, student development, and instructor performance. And under these, I have described, and some of this comes from functions and criteria, some of it is my addition, the criteria, and these are ranked in order of importance. And so I have criteria for organization of the course, criteria for content, criteria for student development, and criteria for faculty. Then, in light of these criteria and ranked order of importance, we have the quantitative data that comes from the course evaluations. We have the qualitative data that comes from the syllabus, the students' verbal comments, and your reflections and maybe peer observations. And then we have the formulas for converting this data based on these organizations into meets expectations, exceeds, or fails to meet. And I have shown that the threshold is 90% to meets expectations, but then the qualitative data can add or subtract to that number. And we have this same process going from content. We look at the content scores, the verbal data, and then we have a threshold from the quantitative course evaluations with a qualitative data that can add or subtract. When you finish this, you'll get an optimization. You'll get a preliminary score, and then you'll see the really power of optimization. If you're teaching a gen ed course, you multiply your preliminary score by 10%. If this is the first time you're teaching a gen ed course, you optimize it by 10% here, and then 10% there. And you see that I have various optimizations for different kinds of courses. If there's great evidence that students had felt that they had high expectations but lots of support, you can optimize it by 10%. If teaching is integrated into the research, optimize it by 10. And then if your APR assesses that clearly, you can optimize it. And then you'll get a final score, and that will be the optimizations added to your preliminary score, and then here's the range. We do a very similar thing with the research where we have work, we have the criteria work published or impressed, submitted, quality of venue, long-term trajectory, quantitative data, qualitative data, and here's our formula that adds the points, and then we have a qualitative optimization, and these all add up to a preliminary score, and then we have optimizations to give you a final score that accounts for things that are really difficult to account for. Service and extension, it's the same process. We have criteria, quant data, qual data, rank order of weights, formula for converting this data into our targets that meet expectations or fails to meet expectations. As you'll see, this is my first draft, and we're going to need a lot of faculty input on, for example, these criteria, the rank order of criteria, and a lot of faculty input on these optimizations. In other words, why should a gen ed course give you 10% more than a doctorate course? Or is a sophomore survey course as difficult to teach, or should it be worth 10% or 5%? Should an online course be worth 10%? What are some of the other optimizations? And I'm going to go through this more clearly in each one of the three rubric videos that I talk about later. I hope this has helped, and I hope it makes sense. It's a first attempt. I think it's going to be a lot better, but we'll see. Thank you.